Michael, hello. Welcome to the Retail Whore Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I can't lie. I have to give up the dirt on this. This is our second time we've been recording this. The first time there was issues and we had to record a second time. So here we are for the second time. I feel like I know you already. It was like a trial run.
Yes, exactly.
Please tell everyone about yourself and your store located in New York City.
Oh, okay. So I'm Michael. I'm half of the Michael Schultz. I'm half of the team that owns Cursive New York here in New York City. I own it with my husband, Douglas Duncan. And we've had stores in New York for, including COVID, like 20 years now.
That's amazing. It's
yeah.
Some of the places you've had, which we'll get into in a second, are like such iconic spots that I was so excited to talk to you about them. I have to ask you really quick though, because you just had the book signing, correct? For
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
How was that? How was
it was great. And it was really interesting because it was the book, it was the first signing or event that we've had like on our own in a store. And so Ted is amazing. He knows what he's doing. He is charming. He can work the crowd. And a lot of people came, which was really super fun. We sold a lot of books. The neighborhood really showed up, which was
That's
even
great.
the best part of it. So it was great. It was
I
really
just
great.
ordered his book. It came in just a couple of days ago because Nathan, when we filmed in Nathan's store, Nathan's like, you need this book. It has so many great tips. It's not because he has a retail store as well, correct?
He has two stores in Seattle. One is in like the hotel near Pike's Market. And then he has a very big store on First Avenue. And his store, Michelle, is a merchandising.
I heard
it's a feat.
I heard it, and Nathan was like, you need this book. So I ordered it and just came in, and he was lovely because I shared, I don't know if I shared someone's post, reposted it about him. And he was like, thank you so much. You know, he was lovely. I mean, he really, I could see how he would work a crowd.
Yeah, no, he really, he's quite debonair.
I love that you had that though. When I saw his post on it, I'm like, we love Cursive.
It's funny because I've known Ted for way back. He was our sales rep when Douglas and I first started our wholesale company like
wow.
30 years ago. So he was our rep in Seattle.
So, okay, we're going to start with that. You okay. And your partner husband had a wholesale line. Tell us a little bit about the wholesale line and when you transitioned into being a retailer.
So we started the wholesale line in like 95. Doug and I had been, his job, we'd been in the industry working for other people. And then his job, they moved production to Mexico. My job, I got fired.
What were you doing, if you don't mind me asking? And where?
So Doug worked for a company called Enos Metalworks. And they were very like right on the money. They were like the hippest, that Bay Area wave of furniture makers that hit like in the 90s. They were a big part of that. And Doug did, he started out spraying tables because he had painted cars when he was in college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Doug's done a lot of things. He was also a blackjack dealer.
Wow. Okay, we didn't talk about this on the first one. I'm glad we're going here now.
So Doug did sales for them. And my company I worked for this woman, her name was Lisa Graves, and the company was Acel. And it was all tabletop. Everything was made out of glass and copper, all handmade. It's
wow.
really, really fabulous. So we both worked for companies that exhibited at trade shows, had great clientele. We were very young and we were thrown into like the sort of the deep end of that. And so when everything went away and we were like, well, if these people can do it, we can do that.
I love
it's a little harder than that, which we soon learned. But so we put a little collection together of handmade. We had a little collection of handmade greeting cards that were all sewn, and some lamps.
Who was sewing them?
Me.
Oh.
I sewed handmade greeting cards for 7 years. That
Wow.
was on top of everything else. I made all the cards.
Okay. Well, how do you keep up with that kind of production when you're showing, if you're of a wholesale line, like how you like
You
sewing
know,
all night long?
I just like, I love repetitive tasks. It's one of my, like, I just spent the whole entire day like stickering ornaments because I just can do it. Like, I
Is
know
it
how to do it.
kind of
I get
meditation?
into a rhythm and I'm like, I set it up so like, I would just sit at a sewing machine and make cards, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week because we didn't have any employees.
Oh my God,
Um,
my ADD would fucking kick in.
so we showed at our first show was at the Coliseum in New York City, which was a part of the New York gift show, international gift show at the time.
Wow, talk about
And yeah, that was like, I mean, the building is, no longer there. Now it's Mad Arts and Design Museum. But our very first order that we ever wrote was to Barney's.
wow,
So Lisa,
impressive.
who was yes, she was the buyer at the time. She came into this, kind of a hot mess booth because we were sharing it with a friend who did mosaics and she zeroed in on the cards and she loved them. She placed a big order and we kind of left. And the show wasn't very good for us, but we left and we were like, well, if Barney's bought our cards, there's something there. We need to, let's work on that. And so then we did the National Stationery Show, which was like a few months later. And it was, it was just, we were off and running. In fact, we had our first, how we ended up, so eventually we opened a store inside of ABC Carpet. And our first contact with ABC is the woman, Paulette Cole, who owns ABC or owned ABC. She came into the booth and she was like, I really like what you're doing. We were doing these like organza lamps that my mother was actually crocheting, each one of them with her beautiful crochet work. And then we were turning them into lamps. I know, real cottage industry going on here. And she was like, Paulette was like, can you make pillows and curtains? And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah,
Mom,
oh no,
yeah.
yeah, no problem, we can do that. So we went back and we put a collection together of these, hand beaded silk screened organza pillows and drapes. And we came back to New York in we had like a little trolley with our samples in it. And we went to ABC Carpet and we went to the buying office and Dana, who was the buyer at the time, she, we unpacked our wares and she was like looking at them and she was like, okay. She's like, all right, this is good. Let's write an order. So she was like, okay, we'll take 6 of these and, 6 of these. And, she just kept writing and basically everything. And Doug and I are just sitting there going like, oh my God, like it's one thing to make one pillow, right? It's another thing to make like, dozens and dozens of pillows. And I'm the one sewing them. And I can sew a square, which is what I was doing with the cards. So, she's like, when do you think you can have that? Or she's like, I would like this by a certain time. And we're like, absolutely, no problem. We can do that. And we leave ABC and we like roll our little roller bag out onto Broadway. And we're like looking at each other. We're kind of nervous. And then we were like, how much do you think that was? Like, is this real? Like, did she really write all that down? And this was back in the day when, buyers would write out,
I miss
on
those
a sheet.
days.
Yeah. And you would get it. And they'd be like, they would write out their description, and then they would be the quantities and like, blah, blah. So we get onto, there's a theater on Broadway and 19th Street, and there's kind of like a little alcove. So we like pulled our suitcase into the alcove and we like get out the order form and we're like, okay, 6 times 275, oh my God. And then we were like, 6 times, 200 or whatever. So we were like, oh my God. And oh my God. We're like, oh my God, it was over $10,000
Holy
worth of
shit.
pillows and drapes.
It's just your mom sewing it.
No, this is me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of stuff that mom was going to do, but it was mostly me. And so like we called a friend and, I hadn't sourced, I'd sourced like, 3 yards of organza. I don't know where to get, like 50 yards of this yellow organza, right? So we call a friend who's in the bedding industry, Nancy Reeb, and she's like, okay, you go to this place, they will have it. So we like trolleyed up there, we bought all of this fabric, we had them ship it back to San Francisco. And we spent, a month printing, learning how to print silk organza, because you can't, or
Oh my God.
it's porous. So when you print on it, it goes through onto the surface below. So we had to line the tables with paper, print, and then you had to pick it up very carefully so that it didn't double print, and then hang it so that it would dry. And we were sharing a warehouse with our friend Maggie. It was such a godsend. And so she left on Friday, and we started Friday night, and we printed, basically through the night. Saturday, because we had the whole warehouse was covered in these giant pieces of fabric, that were 9 feet long, so that they could dry.
My God.
And then we delivered them, and they loved them. And it was a really good lesson in kind of how Doug and I have always done our business. Is if someone gives you the opportunity, at least try. Like,
Yeah.
we could have failed. It could have been like a huge disaster. We could have made them, and she could have been like, you don't know how to sew, which I didn't. But she was like, and luckily ABC's aesthetic is a little bit, kind of loose like that anyway. So it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And I mean, and
Wow.
major people, some major celebrities bought them, which at the
That's
time, in the 90s, when a celebrity bought something, you were like,
Yeah.
whoo-hoo.
How long did you do this line for?
So we did, so that portion of the line lasted for maybe 4 years before we were like,
Wow.
this isn't sustainable. But the greeting card business kept growing and growing and growing. And so we kept, we
Wait,
had more.
okay, wait. You were doing the greeting cards still at the
Oh
same
yeah. Oh
nose
yeah.
at the same time you were sewing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
did
Yeah. Yeah.
you bring on anybody else, or were you just like,
No.
oh my God?
We did it all. We were self-financing everything. So we were like, we had no money. We were living in, this crappy little apartment in San Francisco. We had no savings, because who has savings at, 20,
Right.
2 years old, or 25 at the time. And we just worked, and we're workers, it's like, it's just in our DNA to get in and get it done. We didn't have employees really until we moved the business from New York to San Francisco, which was probably about 3 years into the business.
Wow, that is insane. Like, we never even talked about this. The last thing, like, I'm like so glad we're doing a re-record. I'm like, holy shit. So you go from you get rid of, you decide to close the books on the hand sewing. Are you still making the cards, or did you just give everything up?
No, at that time we were still, we had developed like different lines in the cards. So we had some other handwork stuff that was done, and we brought on our first employee to do that, and then we added a second employee. But I pretty much did all of the sewing for a good 7 years, until we kind of we outsourced a little, and then that really wasn't for us. And so it wasn't later until we found somebody who could really do the sewing. And then Monica, who was amazing, she eventually took it, because she moved upstate, and she eventually took it up there and did all of the sewing there.
Wow. So it's funny, because you ended up at ABC Corporate and Home again within the store with your own.
Yeah,
What a weird circling around. Was that?
I know, that was
It seems kismet, but it also seems like, wow, it's like so full circle. Tell us about that, how that happened.
So it was, we really wanted to open a store. We were doing trade shows. We were doing, a lot of trade shows. They're very physical, as they're hard work, the setup, the tear down, the shipping, and we were getting, older, in our 30s.
Oh God.
And I was like, and I always it was always a dream to open a store. Like, I always thought that a store would be awesome. And so we started looking around for a space, and we had found a space, and we were very serious about it. And we were telling a friend of ours, and he told his friend Judith, who's an amazing PR person in the city who happened to be doing PR for ABC. And Judith is like queen of like connecting. And so when she was talking, she was like, you know, Paulette, my friends Michael and Doug are looking to open a store, and you know, they own Motel Deluxe, which is the name of our wholesale company. And Paulette was like, well, where are they going to do it? And so she told her, and she was like, you know what, have them call me.
Did Paulette know it was you?
She didn't know that we were going to open a store because we had just been, you know, selling to them for all those
Okay.
years, and we were friendly with her, but like, you know, it wasn't really anything that we'd only told like our close friends.
Okay.
So our close friends kind of, you know, it got to Judith, and then Judith, you know, was she liked to talk a lot, and so she connected us, and she, you know, she called us and said, you know, Paulette wants to talk to you. And Doug and I were like, oh my God, like, what do we do? You know, does she want to send back those curtain panels that, you know, she bought like 10 years ago? And she called us in, and she was like, you know, here, you want to do this? What do you want to do? And we told her, and she was like, well, why don't you do it here?
Wow.
And we were like, okay, you know, and it just kind of, I think maybe 4 months later we opened.
I mean, for the people that are listening that don't know ABC Carpet Home from back in the day, it's a very different animal now. But my old boss, Michael Campbell, who owned Fred Siegel Finery, when he first took me to my first New York show, he would take me to all of the places. So it was Fish's Eddy, it was ABC Carpet Home, it was God, I can't remember the dive bar's name now. They've closed since.
Lucky Strike.
And he took me to all.
That's so 90s. I love it.
Oh my God. And we stayed at the Paramount. Okay.
Oh yes.
Myself. It was the most amazing time. I mean, because it was New York in the 90s, and it was, and I just remember, I still remember walking away from ABC Carpet Home, and like everything was so yummy. And it reminded me much of Fred Siegel, where you would go from one section, you know, the bath apothecary section, and then to your state, now realizing it was your stationery section, and then upstairs and in the I mean, it was just so magical. I mean, it was one of those things for retail. It's it's much like Filamento in San Francisco.
Yes. Oh my God. Can we talk about Filamento?
Okay, I'm trying to get Iris on the show.
Oh my God, please, please,
yes.
please.
Nathan, God, okay, Nathan, this is all about you right now. Nathan connected, he said, you know, I wish you could get, you know, Filamento, because I asked for our listeners, throw out some names, some stories you want to hear, and we'll reach out to them, see if we can interview them. And he threw out Filamento, and he's like, I'm going to go try and find her. I don't know her, but I'm going to find her. He finds her on Facebook. He reaches out to her, and now they're like best friends. They're all talking about everything, but he's like, I told her about your podcast, and I'm really hoping to get her on, because she's just written a memoir, and it isn't out yet.
My God. Oh, really?
And for anyone who doesn't know Filamento, that is like the most amazing, same thing, like the most magical store.
So Iris, when I was working for the first company that I was working for, Iris was basically my mentor.
Oh my God.
She took me under my wing, and she taught me. She didn't know she was doing this, but she taught me how to be a buyer.
I love that.
She, you know, hers was the first store that I went, you know, I grew up in a very small town in Idaho, you know, there was no such thing as, you know, I don't know, glamour and, you know, over the top, but yet accessible. You know, I just didn't know, like, I didn't know. I mean, I knew napkin rings, but, you know, I didn't know that people could have like, you know, 6 different sets of napkin rings that they, you know, would use at different times. Like, I just, you know, I didn't know that. It wasn't part of my thing.
Yeah.
And so when I started selling to Iris, you know, I was really green, and she, you know, I would come to the store, she would walk me around the store, she would talk to me about products, she would show me like what she was going to do with the products that, you know, that she was buying from us, what she might want from us, you know, what she was thinking of next. And so when Doug and I launched our own company, she was one of the first people to be like, okay, I want all the lamps that you're making. I want, I want these cards, but can you do it this way? And then that way became kind of the way that we did them.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. What a small, I mean, it's like,
She is beyond fabulous. And that store is legendary. I
okay, you
still
have
go
to
back
reach
to
out to
being
her
like,
for me. If you can find her on Facebook. She lives in
I'll,
Mexico now.
oh, she does. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna
And
find her.
and what's funny is that her place in Mexico is like 45 minutes from our little place, because we have a little place in Baja, which is like,
Uh-huh.
it's Mexico, but it's 45 minutes from San Diego.
Right. Mhm.
But she's 45 minutes from our house. And I was like, this is such a small world, but she's living her best life there and wrote a book, and what a small world. And
Oh my God, I want that book so bad.
I know Nathan's dying for it. Nathan's like, I'm trying to get an early manuscript. Like, of all people,
Oh,
Nathan pulled off.
she has some stories, because she was really, and then she, they started a wholesale, she started a rep company, and she started wholesaling these really amazing. I have 2 vases from this company that she repped still in my house.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just hijacked your.
No, no, no.
But I love that you know her.
Iris Fuller is like, and that was the other interesting thing about, like, all along, Doug and I had really amazing mentors, friendships. You do the circuit, you do the trade show circuit, you see the same people all the time.
Family.
Yeah, you go, you go to dinner, they have children, it's just it's a tight thing. And if you're paying attention, which I think is hopefully one of the things that I'm fairly good at, is like, you learn so much and you pick up so much stuff that is gonna, carry you down the way.
Yeah, I was very lucky in the mentors that I had through the Fred Siegel world of Michael Campbell and Fred. And, I think like you said, like, if you're listening and you're paying attention and you're not taking it, because it would have been very easy to take it as nitpicking and not micromanaging, but like writing you. I mean, like, you didn't fuck around at Fred's. Like, you were like, you got time to lean, you got time to clean. I mean, it was like, and I will say that either you survive in that environment or you don't. And I truly believe that is the reason why I have the work ethic that I have now, is because of Fredo and Michael Campbell writing me and expecting that standard and understanding that standard comes with doing the things.
Yeah. And you get the rewards from that too. Like, if you do that, if you can, I was listening to your podcast today, and you were saying, like, open the boxes on the floor. Opening boxes on the floor is, you will sell stuff right out of the boxes. It's the crazy. When we had our store in Grand Central, we would make there was no storage there, no backstock, zero. So every single day, everything had to be delivered.
Oh my
And
God.
it had to go to the loading dock, up the elevator,
Oh my God.
across Grand Central, and then to the store, which we were open from 8 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And so try to make deliveries around, 7:30 or 8 o'clock, but there was still a lot of people there. And we would park the trolley in the hall, and people would just start digging through.
Yeah.
Like, you would turn around and somebody would be standing there with something that they had just pulled out, going like, I'm like, it's not even priced yet. Because it's like, it just came in.
There are people people are like, oh, that's why we have a stock room. That's why we have stock people. But honest to God, it is the same thing Fred said, energy creates energy, and that people moving and opening boxes and that excitement, and people get excited. People want to see, like, what is it? Is it new? And it's like, it's such a odd phenomenon, but it energy creates energy is the only thing I could put it as.
Yeah. So to go back to ABC, so people who don't know, ABC was like the most insane styling, merchandising, just completely over the top, every surface. If there was that, 500 chandeliers hung from the ceiling, all different, aesthetics, all and not only the chandeliers, but like, curtain panels and garlands of flowers, and they had kind of in the 90s there was a little bit of a Victorian bent to it. So
Yeah.
there would be like they would create these things, and then there'd be like a little mouse sticking out from this little hole with it in a display of teacups. And you're just like, how is this, how does this make sense? But it makes absolute sense. And
How,
that's what drove the business to that store, because they had a style. Nobody had the style and the
I
space and the whatever and the gumption to do it.
mean, what was the square footage of ABC? What do you think?
Well, it was 6 entire floors, so it was probably,
Wow, it was 6? Why don't
yeah,
I remember it?
7 floors, including the basement. So it was probably like, it was maybe 8,000 or something a square a floor, I would think.
Oh God, that gives me
Yeah.
a gig.
Our shop there, our shop was 220 square feet, but we were the whole entire front side of the left side of the store.
And you were all stationery and cards and
We did a mix. So we did jewelry. We sold some home accessory stuff, but we was really stationery focused. That's what we were really brought in to do. But from the very beginning, we sold all kinds of little decorative stuff also. The thing that was interesting is ABC wasn't very good at selling small stuff, because just the way it was run and merchandised. You can't sell little tiny Japanese bronze bunnies, just putting them. They're going to get shoplifted, or they're going to get knocked on the floor and stuffed on. And we had cases that we could manage, and so we really built up a business of having that kind of stuff.
Talking about shoplifting, I can only imagine both, because we haven't really talked about the Grand Central store. I do want to touch on this fact of Grand Central. For anybody that has been to Grand Central Station, it is just a sea of people. And I can't imagine a sea of people swarming into your store at Christmas time. How many square feet did you have in that space?
That one was only 350 square feet.
So throngs of people, and then you trying to put out merchandise. That is like my biggest nightmare. I'm not gonna lie. As a merchandiser, this is why I go in at 6 o'clock in the morning when I get work. There's no one in the store, because at Anthro, it was like we get all the big moves done early morning, and then you'd have most of it wrapped up by 10. They opened the doors, and it was like we were on Third Street Promenade, and there were so many fucking people, and it was just like people and kids and terrorists and touching everything, and it was just like, oh my God, I have to get out of here. It was, and it's so weird. I'm still like that now. I'm like, I get it. It's odd. It almost makes me nervous. So I can't imagine what that must have been like. I mean, the energy is so amazing at Grand Central Station. So I can imagine it's always has that hustle bustle, and then that feeling of holiday when people are like rushed and buying gifts. And what a cool place to have a store.
It was it was completely the opposite of ABC. ABC was like a slower pace, a lot higher sales, more hand holding, of customers. Grand Central it's a train station. People are on their way, going here and there. It's fast. You have to get it done, but you have to still have all of that customer service. You still have to have all that merchandising. So we just developed systems where we have these carts, which I love. We call them the granny cart. And so if you need to do a display, you take everything off, you put it on the granny cart. It can be wheeled around, to like where you're going. Oh, I love them.
Yep.
And they look good on the floor, because if you take the stuff off, it's pretty much stuff that came from one shelf. So it kind of makes sense, even if it's sitting there, while you're working on it.
Yeah.
And then you learn how to merchandise very fast. And I was really lucky, because one of our employees, Elena, who really rose to the ranks to be our virtual merchandiser, because I just, I couldn't do it all. And so she would come in, she would rotate between the stores, and her job was to just basically do that. So she would come in and she would redo displays every day in all the, the different stores.
How often did you guys do big flips? Your
Big,
250 and 300 square foot stores.
big for like maybe every 6 weeks.
Okay.
Because we really, ABC was a very highly visual place, and so you had to keep up with that. It needed to be really fresh looking all the time, and so
Yeah.
that was, tearing it down. And we also had this weird thing where our wall where all of our merchandise had to be removable so that they could get into the display windows. So
Oh.
whenever they needed to do the display windows, we had to tear the whole back wall down and physically take panels out of it, and then wait for them to redo it and then put it back and then re-merchandise it. So we kind of got into this rhythm of like, okay, if we're going to do that. And they also wouldn't tell me when it was going to happen. So they'd just say on Thursday, this is going to happen. So we'd have to wait till we closed, tear everything down. They would work overnight. We would come back in the morning before we opened and re-merchandise it. And so I got really, really good. And the team got really, really good at, being able to make the moves, think ahead about what we were going to do, and do it. And, working during the day. I mean, I still like this, the home store that we have now, and even the gift shop, we do a lot of merchandising, just during the day.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it again, the same thing is that energy. I mean, if we're doing big shifts and I'm literally taking an entire section down and there's no tables, I have to stack things on the ground and it gets super dicey. Like I get really afraid that either I'm going to be the one falling and tripping, but I'm also afraid of customers like tripping over something. Cause it's like, I mean, at Rock Paradise, it's like a shit ton of smalls and it's like all lined up on the wall. And I try and keep it as neat as possible, but it's like it makes me just, what is your merchandising philosophy what has it been for your other stores as well as what it is for now for Cursive on changes and holidays?
So, I think the overarching thing is that you just have to, what I like in stores, and when we were talking about like ABC and Filamento and stuff, there was a total point of view. Like you walked into the store, you understood what they were doing. Or you might not have even understood that you were doing, because a lot of people went into ABC and was like, what is this? Like, they couldn't process it, but that was their point of view, and you got it. You were like, okay, I understand what they're doing. And I think my thing is, your store needs to have an individual point of view about the people who own it. And that means that you have to create a style, your individual style that makes your store different than the store down the street, the store across town, the stores in, other places. It's like you have to develop that and nourish it and figure out what it is. I personally, I can't stand risers, like especially plastic risers. I know that you're like,
oh my God,
I'm like,
my language.
I can't, but our Elena, our visual merchandiser, they're handy and they're easy. And I totally get that. But I'm like, we can't do that. We have to figure out another way to do it. And I like everything to be perfectly straight. I don't like things put on an angle. And so you just kind of, I think you just have to work on it and develop it and see what works. And, my new thing, I used to be much more like, this needs to be done and this needs to be, and we have to move on. And I think the older I get, I'm more like, okay, let's do it. I'm still like, let's just do it. And then I'm not a big futzer. Like, I don't want to spend a lot of time, doing this thing back and forth. Let's just do it.
Left, a little to the right, a little.
See what's left over, because there's always the granny cart full of crap that you're like, what am I going to do with this one, glass bunny that's left over from whatever? And I'll just leave it there. And then at the end, I'll just walk around and I'll figure out a place, for it to go.
Lisa, Stephen Young's wife, when we do sections together, which we usually were merchandising two separate areas, but it's always like the one item. And Elisa's always like, it will reveal itself.
Yeah.
So, and it's true. And it's like, it's funny now that I'm doing these, this platform and I'm filming lessons and I'm filming them in real time in real stores with real amounts of inventory, because I think the videos that are out there are like this perfect amount of merchandise, and here it
Yeah.
goes, and ta-da, and it's like, meanwhile, the retailer's sitting there with 1,500 SKUs and like, yeah. So, I go through that because I'm filming, I don't preset it and then take it down and film it. Like, I'm literally building it and filming it at the same time and talking through the whole thing. And it's like, okay, don't know where this is going. We're going to put this to the side, and then I'll circle back around and like, see this thing we didn't know. What is that? Look at here. It's going to go here perfectly. But it's funny that you always have that single
Yeah,
item.
but just don't put it somewhere where you're not going to see it, because then that's the thing. Then you're like done, and then you're like, oh God,
I've done
that
that
like that thing. What am I gonna do? I mean, I'm also not above just putting it in a drawer and forgetting about it for a little while. Also.
I love that.
Douglas does not like that when he opens a door and he's like, well, why are these journals in here? I was like, oh, they were on hold for somebody,
Oh,
No, I just didn't have any place to put them.
I know. And it's like, it's so funny because I literally have that. And there's some certain items in some people's stores where it's like, I just keep moving around. I'm like, when are we going to put this on sale? Like it has been here for 6 months. It's the last one. Like, let's just say goodbye to it now.
And Doug and I have, I think, we've been very fortunate to have a lot of really good mentors, and some of our best mentors are our friends Frederick and Alan, who've owned a wholesale company for 40 years, and they own retail stores too. And one of their best advice that they gave us when we opened retail stores is they were like, do not fall in love with your merchandise. Like, your merchandise is, it's to sell. And, sometimes that means that, you're going to have to discount it, or you're going to have to, reprice it. Repricing is a great thing. I mean, sometimes if something isn't moving at $21, if you put it at 19, it's going to go. You don't have to redline it. You can just, reprice it, and then that's the sweet spot for that thing. And then and then if you're fine with that margin, then great. And if not, then you don't buy it again.
Yeah, I that's a good idea, because I'm not, I mean, I hate, sales are kind of the bane of the existence of retail.
Yeah.
It's like, especially with apparel, it's like you don't have a choice. But
Yeah.
It's always the question of like, how long, like my client Rock Paradise, we created a sale bookcase, and I keep saying this is only here until fall, because once fall comes Q4,
Right.
it's being filled with regular price merchandise.
I need it.
And he's like, we had a meeting last week, and it was like, okay, guys, like, I'm there. We're going to set up holiday, just want to make sure everyone's prepared. And that sale, and you could see Jason's eyes like, well, what am I going to do? You're going to have it out in January, but it's going away. Like, I need that bookcase.
I need the space, because we need to sell the regular priced merchandise, that holiday stuff that we have to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about you. No longer, the COVID came with the obvious for a lot of people. And I believe that's when you both decided to close. Did you close ABC before that, or?
Yeah. So ABC closed on March 2nd. We were out. We were out of the space on March 2nd. And it was very lucky, because if it would not have been good to have been there during the
So
pandemic.
that was before COVID was like announced.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And then we closed. And then we closed. The Grand Central closed March 17th, and we also run the retail for NYU Hospital Medical Center. So we have some medical center stores, and those closed on the 19th of March.
Was this a planned closure, or was this because of?
No. So I mean, we were basically, I was in Grand Central. We knew that there was some virus, happening. Some of our employees, I told them, I'm like, if you don't want to come in, don't come in. And the traffic just was like going down. Grand Central, 800,000 people a day go through Grand Central, or used to go through Grand Central on a normal day. And it was just dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, and there was no one in it. It was a ghost town. And finally, I just, it got really bad. It was me and the manager. And I was just like, you know what, we just need to close. And they weren't letting us, the MTA really did not do a very good job of managing the situation. So basically all of the retailers in the hall got together and we were like, okay, we're just going to close. And so we closed, and we thought 2 weeks,
Yeah,
it'll be two
what I
weeks
thought.
or 3 weeks or whatever. And, and it never opened again.
Wow. What, did you pull all your inventory out then, or did you go back later when you realized it's
So
done?
we pulled out the inventory stayed there. So March, April, May, we had to be out. So we basically, they were still charging, rent, and the rent there was astronomical.
I can imagine.
And Doug and I were like, we don't think that like this is going to open. And when it does open, if, this is the way things are going, we're not going to have the foot traffic to sustain the business that we had there, between we still had 17 employees. And we
Wow.
were like, how can we, and of course they were all furloughed when we closed everything. And we come to find out that in our lease that we had personally guaranteed our rent for the duration of our lease, which meant that we could have owed them millions of dollars in rent if
Oh,
we decided to leave. Luckily, there was a clause in our lease where we were able to vacate,
wow.
forfeiting our $60,000 deposit.
Ugh.
So we pulled out, we gave them the space back on July 1st. It took us like 2 weeks to like move all the merchandise out, and
It must be so
and
bittersweet.
it was heartbreaking because it was that store generated the bulk of our income.
Mm.
And we had worked really hard and we'd really established a very good business there, but it was a very hard place to do business. The MTA was not very good landlords, and it was very, very, very stressful. And our lease was coming up at a near point anyway, that they were probably going to double our rent,
Oh, gee. So,
even if we could have gotten it, because it's on a bidding system there. It's an RFP, so people do request for proposal, and then they don't tell you how much rent they want. People just come in and say, I'll give you this and I'll give you
Jesus.
this, and whoever gives them the most money they go with.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, so
Oh,
that's how most public things are done, through RFPs.
wow. I had no idea. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the time when we had signed the lease 12 years before, we were younger and maybe a little bit naiver. And, we just signed the lease, and we didn't, I mean, we had a lawyer look at it and stuff, but we didn't really understand fully that, our apartment could be on the hook for the rent.
Wow. Wow.
So getting out from underneath of it, we felt like it was, we were lucky that it happened the way that it happened. And it really let us just completely have a total reset on how we wanted to live our lives. It was a very stressful, being an ABC, having 17 employees, having the hospital business, having Grand Central, everything open so long hours.
Oh my
And,
God.
Grand Central was, we would do 300 transactions a day on a normal day, and at Christmas, starting, we could do 500 and 600 transactions a day. So that's like a transaction every 2 minutes.
That
Now,
is,
maybe it could have been a card or like whatever, but
but still,
most of it was like gifts that had to be wrapped. And so there had to be 3 people and the person wrapping. And so I would be there for 13 hours a day. I would take a lunch, but I would basically gift wrap or gift bag
that's
for
like
13
stressing.
hours a day.
It's making me so glad I'm not retail. I just like have visions of wrapping in my store at Fred Siegel and like the hours. And my husband says I do it now. He said you're like doing this thing with your fingers in your sleep, and that's
Yeah.
doing garland. But
Yeah.
I've from like wrapping, I
Yeah.
still do that. It's
Yeah.
oh my God. So
I had PTSD for like I think I've just barely gotten over it.
I think everyone in retail, I mean, that's insane. When you think about it, I mean, like that amount of transactions is crazy to hear. But when you think about that's a sale every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That is
And
just like,
there would be a line, and there would be like, two people at the register and one person on the floor, because you couldn't have, there was no, it was 324 square feet or something. You couldn't have, we had a big table in the middle, and so everyone would kind of line up around it. And then we had a line wrangler, basically. The other person working in the store would just stand there and make sure that they didn't cut in front of each other and, start a huge fight, which would always happen.
and New Yorkers are not patient. I mean, I love me some
No.
New Yorkers, but
Yeah.
it's like, I know from walking
Yeah.
the streets in New York, if you God forbid you slow down
Yeah.
on a sidewalk, it is
Someone's gonna
like
say
the most
something.
annoyed people. It's like, that's why I told my husband, I don't think you would do well in New York, because he's surfer and he's just super chill. And I'm like the 80, I'm like the type A personality. He's just like so relaxed. I'm all, yeah, that won't work in New York. Like, not walking down the sidewalk. Just letting you know.
The key to New York City, if you live in New York City, is to make your not life, but to make your geographicness that you live and work in as small as you possibly can. So like to make your commute as less as you possibly can to your like restaurants and your neighborhood, and that helps with all of that fast, paced. No New Yorker goes to Times Square unless we're going to Broadway. And then there's ways to get around Times Square, so that you don't have to do it.
Man, I miss New York. I have not been since pre-COVID, when I was doing setups for the Harper Group. And it is a city that I absolutely adore. And it's like, I can't wait to go back. So, okay.
It's starting to feel the same again.
Is
We're really coming back, and you can feel that, especially in our neighborhood in the West Village. It's full on here again,
Oh my God, it's
which
so
is
great.
really lovely to see.
Because from afar, for us in California, when you would see New York, because you guys were in lockdown a lot longer than us.
Yeah.
And then it flip-flopped, and then we were back in lockdown for it. But your city really handled it well. It didn't seem like you had the pushback here at California did. Like,
No.
anti.
It was really interesting because like we were hit hard. There was semi trailers, cooling units full of people who had deceased, because there was nowhere to put them. And that New York really rallied around and went like, okay, this is, and I wasn't sure, because New Yorkers can be quite contrarian and like want to do what they want to do. But the mask compliance, and we never had our stores, so we closed, and then we were like, what are we going to do? And when we reopened the small store in October of 2020, we were like, what's this going to be like? And everyone wore a mask. Everyone was so happy that we were open. It was wonderful. It kind of counterbalanced all of that other stuff, because it was like, here's just a really wonderful thing of a community rallying around, coming in. People hadn't been able to shop, right, for months and months and months. New Yorkers are shoppers.
Yeah.
And the people who come to New York want to shop. And so they were like, oh my God, a store that's open. I'm going to wear my mask. I'm going to come in. I'm going to buy something. We would have people come in, and they would be like, I don't even need anything, but I can't believe that you opened during a pandemic. Like, that is nuts. And we want to support you. So they would buy stuff.
So I want to go back, because you didn't just reopen a store. You like full on like decided to sign a new lease and open a brand new store during a pandemic.
Yeah.
And
we opened two.
That is ballsy. I mean, and such trust in retail and your love of retail, and that you're going to create something again. I mean, that's true. Like, I know this is going to work. I mean, what was that decision like? Was it, let's do it? Or was it like, what the hell are we doing?
We went away. So we have a small cabin in near Yosemite up in the Sierras, and that we go to during the summer. And our dream was to be able to spend the month of August there. But of course, when you're in retail and you're, taking a month off is, not realistic. So when this happened, we were like, okay, let's do it. And so we took a month off. We went to the cabin. Actually, we took 5 weeks. And we went to the cabin and we just, I started a walking practice. We didn't talk about work at all, like nothing. We made campfires and we hiked and we
Ah,
you know, drank a lot of Negronis. And at the end of it, we were like, we're going back to New York. We didn't know what we were coming back to because we were like, is it worse? Like what's going on? And we were driving to Tahoe. And on that drive to Tahoe, we were just like, okay, well, we need to work. We're not of retirement age. We need 10 more years of work. I don't think anybody's going to hire us. I don't necessarily think I also want to work for anybody.
no.
And we love retail. And I think that we had more to say, I think, with what we want to do with retail. And so we were like, okay, well then let's just do it a completely different way. Where would you want to open? And we were like, okay. And the funny thing, the very first store before we went into ABC, we were going to open in the West Village. And so
Mm.
we were like, okay, let's go to the West Village. So Doug rented a bike and he rode all over the West Village, all over the village, Greenwich Village. And we looked for places. And we finally settled on this one very small little space. It was for rent by the people who own the brownstone. And we were like, okay, well, let's take it we opened in October and we signed a 4-month lease at a very low rent because they were just like it's sitting there and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, at least we'll get Christmas and we'll get Valentine's Day, which is always our biggest holidays. And we opened and it was great. And then we were like, okay, well, let's make sure that we can stay here. So we actually ended up moving that store 3 storefronts down because we could get a longer lease and it was a slightly bigger space. And we had always wanted to open a home store. And so we did the same thing. We were walking around and Doug found this one and it had a for rent by owner sign. And, it's the right size. It's 630 square feet upstairs and has like 300 square feet downstairs. And we could totally change our lives because we had a huge warehouse in Brooklyn, in Greenpoint that we were traveling to, all the time. Doug was constantly in the car making deliveries, and that we
Wow.
just didn't have a very good quality of life.
Yeah.
We ate out a lot and we traveled a lot, but we didn't, there wasn't a slow pace of just Doug and I just being able to,
Be.
stop and get a bagel. Everything was on all of our other stores except for the NYU stores were on somebody else's schedule. So like Grand Central, it was a mall basically. And so we had mall hours. And if we weren't open at 8 o'clock in the morning, if we weren't open by 8:05, there was a fine, and that fine was $1,600.
Jeez
Yeah.
Louise.
And ABC, because it was inside of this department store, we had to be there when the store opened because we were responsible for manning our own,
Yeah.
space. And so there was just no leeway. And now it's like, if we roll up 10 minutes late, I mean, maybe someone's standing outside, but
It
it's just
also
different. The pressure's different.
more control that does, I mean, it's like you had tentacles so far out that,
Yes.
it now to have 2, and it's got to be so much pressure, and where it feels like almost like you can enjoy the process again and
Yes.
really enjoy
Totally.
retail
Totally.
and being in retail and because it's not, like you said, it's not on somebody else's schedule and you're not like,
Yeah. I
I
mean, we're 4 blocks apart from each other. And so like, I was doing ornaments yesterday and Doug loaded them up in a little trolley and he just trolleyed them up the street. And you're trolleying them up the street and people are like, oh, hey, what are you doing? Oh, is Holiday coming in? And he's like, oh yeah, Holiday. And it'll be out in whatever. And like, it's so, we never had a street level community based retail. And we had major retail stores in New York City, but we had never had that experience,
yeah,
that level.
it's got to be, I mean, I love neighborhood stores. There's something, I I can't handle the mall animal anymore. Like, but there's something, and not even like our downtown Manhattan Beach. It's like now become like the Beverly Hills of the beach. So it's like all these high end, but there's something about stores that are in neighborhoods, and you can walk to dinner, and it's kind of like,
Yeah.
where Nathan and Co.'s store is in Oakland. It's
Yeah, it's fabulous.
oh my God, there's little apartments, and then
Yeah.
there's restaurant after restaurant, and then stores. And
Mhm.
I mean, that is the kind of, and I said to Dave, Mike, I could live here. And he's like, you don't want to live in California anymore. This is California, Michelle. I'm like, no, but I could live here. I like this.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's a lot of what New York, where it's not in like downtown, like we're a lot in New York where they're in neighborhoods. It's like, that's one thing I love is like, when I go to New York, I don't even take taxis. I will literally walk.
yeah. Oh, New York is the best. The
So,
best place to do in New York is walk, and it
I,
changes, all the time. So that same walk that you took 6 months ago, it's going to be completely different.
that's still my favorite thing to do. So since you're in the store, give us a little tour if you can. I don't know if I think you're on your laptop, but the case is what I die about behind you. I love, like, it's kind of that uh not trinkets and treasures. What is
Yeah.
the
So
oddity?
just yeah, like curiosities.
Yes, kind of
So Doug's brother is this amazing woodworker in San Francisco, and he does custom kitchens and bathrooms and stuff for high-end stuff. So he built all of our fixtures for us. I designed them with our architect, and then he built them, and then flew out and installed them. So this is a fireplace. So there's a not working fireplace underneath.
Oh
And
wow,
so I designed this as a mantle
I
for
love that.
the fireplace, but it's the jewelry case. So it's full of jewelry and little, finds and fun things that, that need to be under glass. And then underneath there's, it's merchandise like a mantle. So now it's kind of in a spooky, dark sort of Halloween sort of mode.
What tell us a little bit about some of the items that you sell in Curiosity. Cursive Curiosity.
So that we had the small gift store. It's heavy on stationery because that's our background and that's kind of what we're really known for. Greeting cards, journals, and then we do apothecary there,
Mm,
and a little bit of personal accessories, some games, men's gifts. We have a cocktail section there. That's a pretty fun. It's skewed a little younger. That store is skewed a little bit younger than the home store. The home store is skewed a little bit older,
okay.
uh, just in the offerings that we have and the price point, really.
Yeah.
And the home store is, throws pillows. We sell a lot of candles, but our apothecary, we only do 2 lines of candles.
What candle lines?
Sister. So we do this line, and it has this impossible name. We're the only place in New York City that carries them, but they are from Antibes and Amsterdam. And
Oh,
then LAFCO just came out with this new collection that is stunning. It's like gray and silver packaging. It's very, very sort of subtle, but the vessels are incredibly hand blown.
I love that candle line.
It's really, and
All their
these are
vessels are beautiful.
these are really even more beautiful than their ones from before.
Oh,
And and it's a higher price point. So at this store we do like our least expensive candle at this store is 95, and at
wow,
the
that's a great.
gift store it's like 35 to 60, somewhere in that.
Wow, I like that. That is very, very different. And I think also that kind of, you're able to walk customers up the street and it's like still keep on shopping. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like where you've got that cross traffic, I'm sure. Although one is obviously higher, but I'm sure they shop at both.
It was interesting because when we knew we were going to do another store, and I'm like, Doug, let's just open them in the same neighborhood, hopefully on the same street. And he was like, no, like what happens, whatever. And I'm like, no, like people, it's quality of life. We can walk between them. We wanted to get a dog, which now we have a new puppy.
Mm.
We can walk back and forth with Slinky, and I'm like, and the customer, we had such goodwill. The people loved us. and open their arms to us. And I'm like, they'll open their arms to something different. And we really did the store like, we have to have a candle at this store. I mean, if you have a store, you pretty much have to have a candle. And
Mhm.
so we just went, okay, we'll just do a smaller selection of higher end candles here. It's the same thing with picture frames. We sell picture frames here, but our picture frames are $200 to $500, and at the other store they're 35 to 175.
I would
So
be
it's
shocked if you
and
haven't.
it's different and it's a different look, and so we just kind of divided it up that way. And people really do shop between these two
Yeah,
stores.
I can
I mean, when
imagine.
it started happening, I would go get Doug and I'd be like, look, they have a bag from the other store and they're buying stuff here. I was totally right.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And it's like I helped open a store in Solvang, and they have a store they've had for 40 years. And when we first started talking, they were like, oh, we want to bring this line and this thing over. I'm like, no, no, no. Like you want totally different lines, because then
Yeah.
you want to be able to start having that promoting cross traffic of saying, even Jellycat, we split the styles. It was like,
Yeah.
if you like these, there's more at our sister store. I said, so then
Yes.
you're like forcing that traffic to go and investigate other things in the other store. I love that.
It's very it works. Or it worked.
So what does holiday look like at your stores? I know you do a lot of ornaments, and I love
Yeah.
how you display the ornaments. Do tell.
So the small store, the stationery store, that's where we do the bulk of the ornaments. And so it's small and we can't really do trees. Although this year we found these fabulous fake trees in Atlanta, and they're like the best looking fake tree I've ever seen in our life. And so we bought them. They're 6 feet tall. I don't know how this is going to work, but they're going to go in the window somehow. And but you can't really shop it, so it's really like more of a visual thing. So what we do is we at that store, all of the ornaments are that the space that we're in was a candy shop. The building is from 1842,
Wow.
and there it was converted into a candy shop in the 50s, and so it has this beautiful like penny tile floor. I mean, it's really beaten up, it's like not in the best condition, but we
Oh,
leave it because
cool.
it's history and it's
Wow.
fabulous. But one of the walls has this beautiful door from 1842 that actually leads into the hall of the brownstone. And so our landlord, Angela, it was actually written into our lease, we can't do anything with this door. So we were like, okay, there's a door taking out, in this small space. What are we going to do? So we built a structure around it that supports greeting card racks in not holiday time. And so
Mm.
you can still see through it and you can see this beautiful door between the things. So that store, we take off the racks and we put in slats with like individual hooks. And so all of the ornaments just go on individual hooks.
I love
Um,
that.
so it's very clean and it's easy. People can just shop off there and then we
Yeah.
can replenish them. And then we do a couple trees where people like the felt ornaments and stuff. People can just pick off of them and we can, if it's on the back side, it won't look terrible during the day. Why people, because that store gets very, very busy during Christmas, like very, very busy. And then at the home store down here, we're doing one of those trees, but we're just doing more high-end German and Italian ornaments and some bird ornaments. So if
It's
you want
bird ornament.
that, birds, yeah.
Okay.
So that we love bird ornaments and we sell a lot of them. So we put those all down here. And so then people are kind of like, oh, if you like these, you can go to the other store,
Yeah.
there's more. If you want birds, you can come here and you can get the birds, but there's no birds down there and there's no German or high end. And we
That's
don't do
really
any of
smart.
the fun stuff down here. It's all up
That's
there.
really smart. Do you sell Cody Foster at the other store?
We do, yeah.
I love that line. I love Christmas. I mean, Christmas is my favorite time of year, and go figure, because I start decorating for people like in October, and
Yeah.
some reason it's like, I think because I'm born 4 days after Christmas, my mom always did such a big
Oh, uh-huh.
thing about it.
Uh-huh.
But like those like vintage or the hand blown and like the quirky, those are like my absolute favorite. I wish I could sell them. I can't sell ornaments to save my life in any of my stores. I'm like, F this, like we're not doing ornaments anymore.
It's funny, I think for some reason we sold them at well, ABC was very known for its ornament selection, and so we were never able to sell ornaments ourselves there. But they did those towers of ornaments and like like beyond amount of ornaments. And so Grand Central, we came up with this slat idea where they could hang in the window where people could see them from both sides. So as you were walking by, you could see we had ornaments. And so you didn't, if you were just window shopping, you didn't have to come in to take up the space to, you know, to stop.
Right.
And then we just had bins and we would just replenish them, you know, we would sell, you know, 300 or 400 ornaments a day at that store. So it was just like, you know, refill, put them out, refill, refill, refill. And you couldn't really, you know, you couldn't, we would start out with the season, you know, like a sea life thing, and then like, you know, a food thing or whatever. And then it was just like, you know, after a week, it was just like, you know, fuck it, just put wherever, like, you know, a shrimp goes next to a cinnamon roll, whatever. And so now that's just our thing. We do that. That's how we do it. And people love it because sometimes you end up with these really funny little stories, right?
Yeah.
You never could have figured out, you know, a shrimp, cinnamon roll, avocado toast, mushroom. You know, someone might come in and be like, oh my God, those are my 3 favorite foods. And they buy them. And then when it gets put out, maybe there's a dump truck and a, you know, a guitar and a, I'm just saying this because I'm looking at bins of ornaments saying, oh.
What does Christmas look like for you this year? I'm not going to keep you that much longer. I as we're heading into Christmas and being my favorite time, like I love hearing what retailers are doing. And
Christmas, we do, where my husband Douglas is very very set on doing traditional old school Christmas. So that's really what we do. We don't really do you know, we don't really do pastels. You know, we don't, it's red and green and gold and silver and you know, traditional looking trees. And you know, we'll throw a little bit of stuff in there, but it's really traditional nostalgic Christmas is what our forte is.
I love that. And then what's your Christmas candle that you're selling?
Oh my God. So there's this company, Lodestone Candle. Do you know Lodestone?
Mm-mm.
So Lodestone Candle is owned by this guy named Gary, and he is from Maryland, and he does this candle. It's like, it's the most beautiful, it's like tallish. It's a ceramic gold vessel, but it's not the gold, it's not shiny or matte, it's kind of in between. It's just a really nice size. And then he does this really beautiful letterpress label on them. So one's like a little wreath, one is a little a pair of antlers, and it's called Festal Forest. And they smell amazing, and it's our candle that we do. We do some other ones, but that's my favorite holiday candle. We basically cannot keep them in stock.
When are you starting to set up holiday?
So holiday, we're going to start bringing in a little bit. People are like, in the last 2 weeks, want ornaments. So at the gift shop, we're going to put in a little bit of ornaments starting next week. I think we're going to take down the card racks, and we're just going to do like a very organized sort of smattering of stuff. And then full on, so we'll kind of just bring it in a little bit, and then full on, you know, I really used to like to wait until like right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's when that makes me happy. But I think it'll probably be full on done by the 10th of November, probably.
Yeah. I love waiting it out, but now I think, yeah, because it's weird because my own personal tree, I used to wait till December 10th. I think partly because we were home from Atlanta from setting up Peking Handicraft. So it was always, and now I'm the weirdo who wants her tree up the day after Thanksgiving. When that happened, I have no idea, but I'm now like, I've got a guy that brings them in from Oregon down at the flower market, and he brings in those really limmy ones that
the silver tip.
Yeah. And it's like, because all of our ornaments, it's all of Dave's grandmother's ornaments and all of my,
yeah.
they're all those like hand sequin balls.
Yeah.
So
You have to post a picture of that.
I will. It's like my favorite. It is literally my favorite. I will sit in my living room before work in the dark and just sit staring at my stupid tree. But I'm now the weirdo that has a tree up like Thanksgiving weekend. Because before I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe that. What are the retail schedule? And it's like, now that's me.
So we love the silver chip tree. And Doug, we buy one that's shipped in from California every year.
Wow.
Because you can't buy them on this coast. I mean, sometimes
What does that
Oh,
cost to fly in a tree?
it's not that, I don't know, $300 for the tree and the shipping,
That's not
maybe.
bad because they're like 150 here.
And we get it tall. We're lucky we have 10-foot ceilings at our apartment. So we'll do like, a 8.5-foot tree. Um, but we're very like it's decorated and it comes down like right after Christmas because it makes me sad. Like,
I know
it,
too.
it needs to go out, but like it goes up before Thanksgiving, usually, depending on when we can get the tree, because sometimes they're hard to get.
I love that. I ask people two questions at the end. One is because this was started stories and lessons from a life in retail. So what is one of the biggest lessons that you can tell our listeners about?
Um, okay, well, I'm going to do a business one. So as soon as you can, put together a team to support you. And really that you need a bookkeeper, you need a CPA, and you need a tax person. And I think that a lot of just small business in general, but entrepreneurs and wholesalers, it's like you need that team to support what you're doing because you're probably not a business person, i.e., you probably did not go to school for business.
Yep.
And you're not going to your time is not best served to do that. So to learn how to do it, I mean, you have to know how to do it, but you don't have to do it. There are people that can do it. And a bookkeeper, we found our bookkeeper, Cynthia. She is, our most prized possession. And now she comes in, twice a month. She does all that. We don't have to worry about it. And a tax person and a CPA, you need it. It's not something that that is superfluous. You need to have those people who can help you navigate those things.
And it takes stress off. I think people think about those things and they get stressed. It's like having an open to buy person. Oh my God, they're going to tell me what I can't spend something, but it's like that phrase, everyone needs boundaries. They
Yeah,
give boundaries and
yeah,
they're very good boundaries. And it's like, it gives you a safety net and it gives you comfort in knowing that these things that have to be taken care of are going
yeah,
to be taken care of correctly.
yeah. And those are things, like not not setting aside your sales tax that you collect, not setting that aside and not spending it on other things, like that will take you down. Like that will take you out of business and put you in, to financial trouble. So you need, a bookkeeper is gonna hopefully be on that and making sure that you're on those payments, or at least that that you have to make those payments. If you
Yeah.
want to make a decision not to do it, that's up to you, but you've then made a decision instead of being like, oh, I owe $30,000 in sales tax. Where is that going to come from? So really building that team and having that support, I think it's a fundamental thing that you have to do as soon as you can do it.
That is fantastic advice. This has become one of my favorite questions. It really has. Like all the conversations I've been having, it's just started like 3 months ago, and it's like it is literally my favorite question now. So
I
last
love it.
question for you is where do you see Cursive in 10 years?
Oh, well, I don't know. We have a 10-year lease on this store. It's been a year, so 9 years. Um, hopefully, hopefully just pushing forward and changing and doing more of what we love, working with, doing more trade shows. I've been doing trade shows for 32 years.
Mm.
I don't see that ending. I think I'll probably go to them in a lark and be beeping at people. I'm like, get out of my way. Um, um, and yeah, and hopefully I would like the business. I think we've done a very good job of establishing a pretty good name and reputation for the business that I think could be passed on to somebody else, and maybe that's an employee who wants to take it on. And yeah, I think we're both just really pretty happy with the decisions that we've made and where life is going, and I think we're just we'll just ride it out.
I love that. That's a great answer. Thank you so much for your time. Not once, but twice. I feel like you're my best friend now.
Well, hopefully. I was telling Doug, he's like, you're doing it again. I'm like, I told you. He's like, oh, I wasn't listening. I'm like, yeah, well, there you go.
That's usually Dave's response to me. Like, what? Oh, you don't listen to me anyway.
Well, I had such a fun time the first time, and I feel like we had sort of a similar but a very different conversation, and I love that also.
Yeah, I 100% agree.